Hambini fans, and welcome to another episode of Hambini Reams. In today's episode, we have this, no less, all the way from Canada by way of China. The brand that started this channel off, none other than Crap Velo. So this frame was brought in person by a chap from London. That is in the south. Anyway, he is a masters rider and a pretty good one at that, because he can do a 10-mile TT, I think in 20 minutes, something like that. And this is his Cervelo S3. First, you'll notice the princess blanket has gone, only temporarily, because the guy wanted his fluffy safety blanket in there. This S3 is 58 centimeters, has a stack of 605 millimeters and a reach of 370 something millimeters. Frame is the rim brake model, I think of this age, which is around 2016, maybe 2017. If you do know what year it is, put it down in the comments. Any smart asses who put down 2024, I'll unlike your comment. This has the rim brake here. Now, the S5 that I used to own, which is basically a bike ridden by knobheads, and designed by worse people than knobheads, had a stupid brake mount that always used to come apart. This one is fairly standard, so it's on the A piece between the two stays and the seat tube. It's got carbon dropouts. Now that tape's just there because when the chap brought it in, he couldn't get the derailleur hanger off, so while he was here I managed to free that off with a bit of heat and a fairly special Allen key. That got it out, but there's a little tab in there that flies out, so I've just taped that up. There's nothing really wrong with that. Carbon dropouts, there's a bit of wear on this one actually. The lower one has a bit of wear. And this bike, I think is his Crip bike, has got the option for Di2 wiring, which I believe will be that hole. But it looks like he's just used normal cable routing. So we've got the cable that comes out of there, and it gets routed round through here. This bottom bracket is B-Bright 79 millimeters. It is a Cervelo unique standard. Factor have a very similar standard called BB Correct. It was made by the same morons. And the bottom bracket that is fitted is a Kogel ceramic. Now he's brought it in because he's had problems with it. It's not really functioned very well and he's not had it in for that long. Now if I bring the muffler in, that's these world-class ceramic bearings. It's not just on that side either. Let's flip it over. More muffler. Might be a bit harder to hear that one on that side. What's wrong with it? Well, 90% of the diagnosis is the history. So if we continue to finger the bottom bracket, first of all, the bearings are gritty as hell. Now, that isn't strictly the cause of it, having shite ceramic bearings, but it can be a symptom of it. And when I looked around this, the most obvious thing was misalignment. Now, it is actually very difficult to see, but hopefully you might be able to just see this cap that's on the non-drive side. On this side, and it is very, very difficult to see, it's slightly away from the frame, and that means something is out of line. So either the bottom bracket is out of line or the frame is not perpendicular to the shaft line of the crank axle. So we need to get this out. So I just had a go at trying to get this out with the usual pullers, and I'll spare you that video footage. It's very, very tight in here, so it doesn't surprise me that this is proved to be problematic. Let's take that away and try and get that out. So I managed to eventually get it out with a puller, well, a few pullers. You can see this is it, just me turning it loosely. It's a bit big. There's a bit of ovality in it, and that's probably from me removing it, or some memory from it being in the hole. But yeah, it's a bit on the big side, that end. So this end is the non-drive end, and that's a bit better. Probably needs a bit of a clean. I haven't cleaned it properly, but you can see where it is. Yeah, don't use a vernier as a de facto measurement, but it's just there for your own visual input. Some more twat bag engineering. We've got a bearing. This is the one that came out of the Kogel bottom bracket. It's labelled as 6805, but the bore is 24 millimeters, and it's also more than 7 millimeters in depth or width, and it's got this really shitty plastic seal. So that is, it's like a little groove in there that sits on the inner race, and that goes on top of it. So if you have a Kogel bottom bracket, you're screwed. You can only fit Kogel bearings to your Kogel bottom bracket. So it is sales by stealth. This is some sort of plastic. I think it might be nylon, but it's quite flexible. I don't think that is Delrin, and that's it just feels a bit too soft to be Delrin. Almost predictable, the bottom bracket shell is undersized. It's, if I just get it in the right place. Again, don't do this. So you can almost hear a lip. So there is an area where it's 45.9, but it's around here. There's a bit of ovality in the shell, so that needs clearing up. It's possibly one of the causes of the grinding bearings. Welcome to that part of the show again. It is time for Dr. Hambini PH double D's surgery, which, as everyone knows, stands for ploughing hairdressers daily. Now, the grammatical English teachers amongst you might think that's only one D, but we're going to say it's two D's because it has extra effect. Anyhow, before we dive in, let's dive in. Please remember to hit that like button, the subscribe, leave a comment, not because I actually give a shit, but because the algorithm is a needy fucker. To be honest, I don't even really do this for the clicks. It's more so that my work colleagues have some fresh material to rip into me with. Yes, you're welcome, lads. Right, anyway, if you do feel fancy, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and if you're especially unwise with your finances, on Patreon. Right, I've decided to call this 5-Year-Old Explains How to Fix Alignment. Let me just check this pen works. Ah, jeez. The pen is working. Right, enough of this foreplay. Let's get ploughing. Let's kick things off with the Mapwreck method. Now, if you are a machinist, you know, or an engineer, or anyone with a shred of mechanical dignity, look away now, because this might be about to trigger an allergic reaction. So this video is called I Hope Someone from BMC Watches This. To give you some context, it is about a BMC bike. The owner has brought it in because he's getting premature bearing wear, and Paul's about to diagnose this.
It's an exaggeration, but if you feel it, you'll get the idea that you can feel something.
The thing he does is he puts his bore, 3-point bore mic in and then measures it. Nothing really wrong with that. You can see some numbers on the periphery of the bottom bracket. So it says 0.82, 0.88, 0.95 and 0.98. Then he shows where those measurements came from, and that is by using a 2-point bore mic, or some people call those stick mics.
This is just a feeler gauge. This is a 0.09.
So just to give you that maths there, 40.95 gauge, 0.09, which is a bit of an oddball, feeler gauge. If you add the two together, you're going to get 41.04. So the feeler gauge should not go in to that bottom bracket hole by the virtue of him measuring it.
And you can see the gap. I mean, I can see daylight here, but just to help you guys out, that feeler.
How can there be a gap? Seriously, how can there be a gap? There can't be. Someone's measured wrong. So then he proceeds to ream it. And this is quite possibly the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. So he uses a set of parallel blocks to measure the alignment and the concentricity. I mean, how can you measure the alignment and concentricity off a bottom bracket hole that is not round. Yeah, it's oval. He's even said it's oval, and he said the other side was like his datum. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Right, fans, gather round. This is what an ideal bottom bracket shell is supposed to look like. Now, I've sketched up this masterpiece with a narrower center section, just so the fucking cretins watching can understand which bit we are talking about. It's not to scale, but this isn't Blue Peter. Right, first of all, the center line. Behold the center line, often talked about, rarely respected, much like health and safety on AliExpress. Anyway, this aside, we've got this, which is the datum, which I've called A. It's the bit that kind of like pretends to be square and straight in a functioning world where carbon frames aren't baked by guesswork. The opposite side should line up with the first side, which is the A. Now, there is a tolerance on here of around 0.05 millimeters or 50 microns, or if you are in American units, 2 thou, which they actually call 2 mil to confuse matters. Now, just to be clear, this is ideal, so let's underline that. An ideal in this world basically means it's mythical, a bit like unicorns or rocking horse shit, or a competent influencer. Now, most press fit frames don't even have this level of precision. They are not machined, they were basically baked. So that's like a dodgy souffle. They get the dough, ram it through a carbon fiber mold, prayed over and then curated by a priest. And then you get a vague shape that looks like a circle if you squint at it with one eye shut. Now, the Mapwreck method. This, we descend into the abyss. Welcome to the Mapwreck method. This is what happens when you get a rotary tool and give it to someone who thinks tolerance is just another. And now we descend into the abyss. Welcome to the Mapwreck method. This is what happens when you hand a rotary tool to someone who thinks tolerance is just something they lack for other people's opinions. Now, this, to be honest, this right here is the work of someone who learnt everything from YouTube except how to inflate a tubeless Continental tyre. So you've got the two bearing seats. Now, I've exaggerated the misalignment, okay? But, I mean, to be honest, in reality, I've seen some stuff that's much worse than this, but they're not, basically, they're not concentric and they're not parallel. It's a Stevie Wonder bottom bracket. Now enter Matey Boy from Cumbria. Now he grabs his favourite parallel block, you know, the one that he got for calibrating his hair cut, and then he rams it through the shell like he's trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Then out come the feeler gauges. Now you can see what's going on here. Because it's rocked and tilted, it gives you a fake reading, which is not going to help anybody really. And I mean, this is a crucial thing. What the fuck is he measuring? I mean, seriously, what the fuck? I mean, it's not anything remotely useful. It's like producing a video calling a guy out for inflating his tyres incorrectly, not apologising when you fuck up, and then removing the video, hoping it'll go away. But hey, it looks good. Thanks to the joys of composite moulding, this is what happens. You usually get some resin shrinkage in certain areas versus others. So the area near the down tube tends to shrink a bit more than the area near the stays, which tend to splay out. It's almost like they engineered that to fail, or more likely, they couldn't give a flying fuck. But, you know, if you're ever in any doubt, just remember, if Paul from Mapdeck can't grasp it, it must be incorrect. And here we have the pinnacle of engineering mediocrity, the Maptech certification program, which is awarded to Paul from Mapdeck for successfully completing a rigorous syllabus that includes precision by guesswork, and how to use a feeler gauge upside down. Proudly presented by Mapwreck University, which I believe is just behind the B&Q in Kendal, Cumbria. So this is how I clock up for machining. Now don't take this as 100% accurate, because I'm partly lying to avoid some fucker nicking my procedures. So here's the bottom bracket again. Here is the center line, or what passes for one. In my case, I'm clocking to an imaginary center, because let's be honest, the actual center doesn't really exist. So I sweep back and forth basically until the DTI stops throwing a tantrum, and then you get something vaguely consistent. And then, I mean, strictly speaking, it's probably not the mathematical middle, but we're not doing like Olympic level metrology here. So we just want a bottom bracket that works, despite being molded on someone's fucking lunch break. Once I found something that doesn't look completely ridiculous, I call that datum A. That one. But I've picked this because the ideal datum, which is, you know, the outside of that left-hand side, is not round, okay? And then I machine either side of it. So go for that one and go for that one. The left-hand side is basically the first one, and the right-hand side just kind of like tags along. Now, before someone in a high-vis vest gets upset, I'm not talking about the Gio Zhang, this isn't textbook GD&T, but this is the real world. And when you're dealing with worn rotors, dodgy casings, or something that's already been bodged by 3 other people, you just kind of like pick the side and just get on with it. This is the bottom bracket shell, the drive side, after we did a spot of fettling. The key thing to note here is I've actually left the dust in so that you can see, okay, so the periphery of the dust has gone, but you can see further down in there how this is at a slight angle. So that is it machined straight, and the bit that hasn't touched is literally around there. So I've machined all the way in there and then out the other end. This is the non-drive side, and it's a bit more apparent there because you can see the dust around there and not so much around there. Now there are 3 marks that you can see in there, and that's for me to check the hole. This side I've left as it is. I haven't faced that side or touched it really. This side I've given it a mild tickle. Now the best way to check to see if you have a flat face, not necessarily an aligned face, is to get something flat. So the end of the receiver tool is quite a good thing to check with. Put it on there and then check to see if you have any gaps. Now there aren't really any gaps on this one, this side, but on this side it is quite obvious that there is a gap. Let's just show you that. A check of the hole diameter, so you can just about see there it's 45.97 to 98. This is the non-drive side, so again I've put the mic in, and then this side is also 45.98. Bottom bracket set up. I've left the bike onto the blanket here. Bottom bracket set up. The receiver tool or receiver adapters on the other side. We've got a press here. You can buy these presses now. I do sell them on my website. It's one that I've had since 2002, 2003. That's how long it's been in operation. The one you get may not have these extra holes. They're used for pulling fairly large bearings off. So this is one piece of metal. At this point we're going to put a little bit of retaining compound in. I've also just put some in the other side. To be honest, you probably don't need it with the fit as good as it is, but it's a belt and braces job. Make sure it's nice and tight and we are finished. The Cervelo B-Bright shell has no lip on this side. If it does have a lip, sometimes it can rub. We'll put the bearing in now and then we'll go from there. So today we are going for Toyama 6806 2RS bearings. Just press them in. When I need to put the end caps in, I've already done the one on either side, and this is the one on the non-drive side. Just make sure you've got it pushed in all the way. Now, it might or might not be obvious, but this part does not line up with this side, so that shows you the degree of misalignment.